Hello and welcome to The Person of the Therapist. In this series, we're looking at the developmental process, the values, the wisdoms, and the experiences that therapists bring from a wide spectrum of practices, theoretical orientations. So I'm delighted to introduce Taylor Lake. Taylor, let's jump in with you. Define for us the population you work with, the theoretical orientation that you lean into, and maybe some of the techniques that you use.
Okay. Thank you. And before I start, I want to thank you for just giving me this opportunity and just thinking of me as you do this. I really appreciate it. I'm a licensed clinician, professional therapist, or a licensed professional clinician. I'm sorry, stumbling over my words.
And that's in counseling or social work?
In counseling.
Counseling.
Yes. And my primary population is children. And when I decided that I wanted to work with children, I think later on I realized that when you decide to work with a child, you're actually working with the parents and the family. So I do family therapy. I work with clients, I work in groups, and I also work with, the parents and some slight couples therapy, more so to help focus on supporting their child. So everything kind of centered around the kid kind of brings in the whole family.
And this is the little tiny children all the
Yes.
way through adolescence, or do you focus just on the young ones?
I would say school age is most of my population, most often. So anywhere from kindergarten, I've had a few children that I worked with that were younger than that, but right on that age, but kindergarten all the way up to high school, college, and then obviously their parents. So that's a different, adults.
Yeah, it's a real spectrum.
Yeah.
Now, the whole idea of just talking to children or even adolescents is horrible to think that the nurturing healing alliance can be established, let alone facilitating some healing. So what approaches do you use to reach and to be so present as I know that you are? How do you approach this wide spectrum?
I really like and start with a Rogerian or a person-centered approach. And so it really focuses on me on building that connection with the client, which is oftentimes just the child. I'm also kind of existentialist when I think about those things too, because it helps me kind of keep in mind that they have a vision for themselves or they're developing something for themselves, so that it's not just about getting to know them, but also kind of helping them figure out how they want to fit into the world or their family or, school and all of the different things that kind of impact that.
I want to underscore your
Yeah.
existential piece here as we keep moving through this conversation. I really want to underscore what you just said about this developing piece, that they really are developing core existential elements, identity, connection, which often is referred to attachment, but is so much more. And then the sensibility of being free or restrained, the sensibility of one's purpose or meaning, or finding a way of being in the world that might be authentically who they are, but at the same time fighting against the alienation and incredible restraints that we put on those little. So please, what is it that you do?
Yeah, thank you. The way you said that really streamlined my thoughts so much better. But yes, there's also elements of attachment focuses, social impacts, behavioral, because I work with kids and, a lot of times the reason that they're brought in for therapy is because of their behavior, how they show up at school. And so how they are relating to the social structures that we have. So all of those things I get to kind of keep in mind and kind of hold when I'm working with clients. And so that's like, again, where I kind of start person-centered. And then in terms of, I guess, my actual practices, I love child-centered play therapy. That's like a big entry point for me. And so allowing that space, for some of the kids, we end up going into the playroom. And we do that more traditional play therapy, but there's also the space too where I work with children in my office, and the play is just having games available. So it's not just the focus on talking. We could play Uno, or we could play Jenga, or games that they like. And I think that gives them that sense of comfort, that sense of I have some control here, also some freedom to not just be focused on the thing, you know? So I think those are really big entry points for me with my clients.
You're bringing in these everyday elements of games just to have them in your office. And then I want to slice through this, that games and the kind of interventions, as it were, that you use are never about busyness, but rather about building the kind of trust and presence between you and your clients. Let's pause a moment here and name some of the problems from this range of children and teens. What are specifically some of the problems that you have that come to you? Yeah.
The biggest one I would say is a lot of the parents, they don't really listen to me. They don't follow directions well. I get a lot of, my kid always talks back to me. They have a hard time behaving and following directions at school. So much of it, you know, is can they follow and do these things correctly? Can they, in some sense, like fit into this box? And so a lot of the big issues that I have initially, we are like looking at the surface is, oh, they don't follow directions. He has a hard time sitting still. She plays a lot in class, or I get a lot of back talk. They don't necessarily do what I say when I say it. But underneath that, then there's trauma, there's loss. Loss is a big one. I see a lot of children who have experienced some type of loss, and that usually underscores a lot of those surface behaviors that kind of come in.
So there's a lot of grief there
that's
not recognized, that maybe the child is ushered through quickly. And so, and we see this at the inner child of the adults, the very parents, that their own fears, grief, the tremendous losses that have to be packed away in order to get on with life, in order to sometimes survive. And so the little ones who aren't, as you describe them, and the parents describe them as not being able to pay attention, not be able to follow direction. And I'm wondering if it's some of the neurological issues, some of the focus on media and technology, and also at the same time the lack of support or the deep grief and traumas that may not be even recognized or again ushered through. So please continue.
You kind of hit the nail right on the head with that. A lot of those, because kids are often ushered through change really quickly. And I say change because any big shift for a child, for us, may seem small, you know, may seem like, oh, we're just moving to a new house, we're just moving across the street. That can be a big change for a child. You know, my whole life is now different. Everything has changed, and then building onto bigger changes, right? I've lost a family member, I've lost a friend. I think those processes that need to really absorb and like be present to change goes by so quick for kids, and so they don't have an opportunity to do that. And it does then show up in the behavior at school, because there's an expected set of things that we need to accomplish. So it's very easy in that setting to start to see, oh, well, this person is struggling to follow these directions. They're struggling to see this, right? Oftentimes at home, it's a little bit more lax. Maybe mom and dad are busy or working, so you don't really get to see that. So then, you know, they get to spend a lot of their time playing games, being focused on the things that they do enjoy that aren't as pressured. But it becomes this kind of dichotomy, I think, where in school we see this kid as someone who doesn't have the ability or doesn't have the skill, or I know I've worked with a lot of children who are diagnosed ADHD or autism, and I definitely believe in, and I don't want to say like these diagnoses are not true or they're not real. And I think that we oftentimes miss like the skills that these children do have because they don't fit into the box of school. And so when I get to work with them, a lot of times I get to see the side that is connected, that is focused, that is very capable of listening and doing, but it's in their own way and at their own pace. And I think being child-centered, being person-centered really allows them that freedom to get in touch with what works for them,
Mm.
and play is like the center of that for kids, even adults too,
Yes.
fun.
So I'm really hearing three domains that you're
Mhm,
working in. One is a real awareness of
mhm,
the neurological and developmental
mhm,
constraints, as
mhm,
well as the behavioral issues that really represent or emerge from
mhm,
this, and the emotional grief. Um, these three are three separate areas
mhm.
that, if we leave one out, it's total misperception of that child's needs, abilities,
Mhm.
and so you so I guess I want to appreciate how, as a child therapist and child-centered, it's
Mhm.
not just a mere reflection back of what the child's story is, but
Yeah.
rather you are working on three tracks at minimal, maybe four, because if we bring in the family, social, cultural, familial
Yes.
arrangements that influence that, then you're working to build that trust to help heal the emotional, to help modify what's problematic behaviors, but connect that to some supportive way to
Mhm.
deal with the, as Candace Pert would say, the molecules of emotion that are
Yeah.
embedded in the body, the neurological systems that create these responses in constrained systems.
Mhm.
And so you're really working on
Yeah.
four levels.
Yes, it's so many things I think that easily get left out
Mm.
and overlooked when we get, like I said, those complaints come from school, and school is such an important like launch pad for so many of us, right? It's where we learn, where we connect, where we basically set our future. And so I definitely understand how it can be such a big, serious thing, and we narrow our focus to just the behavior in school. But if you don't
Yeah.
bring in those other pieces, I feel like you really lose the client and lose what it is that they're really here for, and we're focused on what we want and not what best serves them.
What a way to sabotage healing
Yeah.
is, yeah. So your skills, when you say child-centered, person-centered, we really highlight deep listening, real presence, and
Mhm.
attentive witnessing, that listening, that holding, that safety that you create in order to deal, to really weave into.
Mhm.
And my sense of you is you're able to step into the deep empathy and
Yeah.
understanding from the child's view.
Yes, it can be, I think, a intense and kind of very heavy connection sometimes, but I also think it's really fun and really, I get a lot of joy out of working with kids. They have so much resilience, and in the midst of so much stuff, it's it's amazing how like fun and silly that they can be in all of this.
I love that you circle that around. So not only dealing with loss and
Mhm.
deep grief, and then bridging that with some really respectful, collaborative, child-centered approaches, and then making it one of the most major healing
Mhm.
aspects of human nature is play, is the
Yeah,
expressive arts.
yeah.
And so it's just such a beautiful circle that you paint for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I through my experience, not just being a therapist, but in other things that I've done, it really just showed
Mm.
me how important it was, to be connected, to how you feel, to be connected to yourself, but also to have fun without that, it really, you know, all of that hard work that we do in some ways gets lost, you know, when you
Yes.
can't enjoy it, when you can't be present and have fun. Mhm.
What brought you to therapy as a field? What life events or something you'd be willing to share with everybody
Mhm.
that may have put you on the path to a mental health field?
Um, I think it was a lot of things. In my family, my grandmother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, with paranoid schizophrenia. And while it wasn't the most extreme case, because she was still able to be present in my life and in my brother's life,
Mm.
but um, having her in my life, in some sense, gave me an awareness of how we can be different in that way.
Mm.
But I also think that it's just kind of the person that I am also. My mom has told stories about me when I was younger, when I would come in on the first day of school and be there to help support kids who would be crying and be so worried and be like, oh, my mom's not going to come back. And I'd be there to like help them feel better. I don't necessarily remember that, but you know, she's always shared that with me. And so I think just my nature as a person in that way, having my grandmother in my life, and then just having a general curiosity about how the world is the way that it is.
Mm. Mm.
Um, yeah, I'm obviously Black or African American, you know, you could see that. And I think growing up in a world where we have these like the history of slavery, the history of differences between people and why some people get treated away and others don't, that also had me asking a lot of questions, wanting to kind of know more. And
Mm.
so that kind of just set me on the path. I think really I think around when I was about in high school, I started to think to myself, like, I want to go into that more. I want to ask those questions.
Mm.
And that
Oh,
kind
looks
of got
like
me started.
we
I
had a
also
little
play
glitch
basketball.
we had a little
Oh, I'm
glitch
sorry. Go ahead.
on
Yeah.
the video where you stalled out, so we'll just keep going. Yeah.
Okay. What I was gonna say, so I played basketball in high school and was lucky enough to go to college and play. And my main focus at that time was like, I'll play basketball, and kind of in the background was pursuing a degree or pursuing psychology or that field more.
Hmm.
And then after that, I ended up getting injured and switched over to being a teacher, which wasn't my dream job, but a lot of people in my family had been teachers. And so once I had gotten hurt, it was like a big blow to me and like made me kind of reflect on everything. And I felt a little bit lost. And so I was like, all right, I'll just teach until I figure it out. And teaching is I didn't really enjoy working in the school system and, you know, a lot of the rules and the focus that they had, but it was such a great experience for me to really see the child side, to be in the school, to just be in that space again, not as a child, but now as a teacher, to see it all. And after being in that for a while, I kind of got back into that focus of like, wow, I definitely see the importance of school, but we're still missing this other side, you know, of how we are and how we grow and start to become, you know, more true to ourselves. Um, wow, as we're talking about this, I'm starting to remember more changes. After I taught, I worked as a ABA therapist. And so I worked with children who have autism and supporting them and learning their basic needs and developing
Mm.
social skills. And so I would spend up to 3 hours at a time with a child at home with them or at school, kind of helping them navigate and learn different skills and adapt. And that was
Mm.
another opportunity for me to really connect with the experiences of not only the child, but this child in this family system and how this one thing for them changes everything for the family. And then after that, I was able to, while doing that at the same time, I got my master's and got my degree and became the licensed clinician that sits before you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a long road that kind of brought me around, and I picked up a lot of experiences that really helped to kind of shape this view that I have now as a therapist.
From the very beginning, I hear the little girl and your empathy as a child for the others, that that your family of origin inspired, supported a way of being in the world that was able then to give to others, to reach out to others, to comfort. And then for you to have you understand the grief and loss of being an athlete and then getting injured, and the whole perception of self and self competency, of strength, of being, ways of being in the world changed right there. Then moving with teaching. And you taught littles?
Yes, I taught second grade. I did a co-taught class. So I had 11 gen ed students and 11 students with special ed. So from
Whoa.
children who had ADHD and behavior problems all the way to, I believe we had a couple kids with a diagnosis of like bipolar or things a little bit more serious. And then after that, I taught third grade and fourth grade.
The whole series from the very beginning really has, it feels very woven with the very art of being a competent therapist that is present, empathic, as well as informed from that wider view of seeing not only developmental issues, family issues, and serious grief and loss. And I think we want to nest this always in social, cultural, and familial and political arrangements that constrain or enhance the development that really, that I envision you on this journey and arriving and then having all of this information that sometimes is very rare to get to be prior to a master's degree. So what do you value most in the therapeutic process in terms of, and we'll get to you brought two symbols today, and we want to look at representations of wounding and healing. But what would you say, how would you ground your idea? What do you value most about the therapeutic process?
I think the highest or the most important thing for me is empathy. And I guess that's as we've talked about that so much, but I think it's so core and key, and feeling close to, feeling connected to somebody, feeling as though you can trust them and that they have your best interest at heart, they understand you. I think when you have that footing, it makes all of the other processes that we do so much easier. I don't think that it's easy to be a therapist. And I don't think that, because you've like taken the classes, right, and you show up and you're ready, you're actually ready.
Wow.
And I think when if the bare minimum, I mean, if the only thing that you can do is connect with your client, then anything else that you do, even if it's not completely perfect, even if it doesn't check all of the boxes, it'll be so much more effective than if you check all the boxes and you don't have that connection. So that's been my experience. You can make mistakes, but if that intention is set, that connection is there with the client, they'll be able to kind of roll with you and know, like, I got what you were trying to say.
And I want to underscore the idea that it's person-centered, child-centered, existential, the phenomenological, deep presence and empathy that builds that very connection that you're talking about. It is not the objectification of the client or the objectifying of the problem or all forms that potentially are distancing, but rather are really leaning into, really caring, empathic, authentic presence for that relationship with your clients.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, all of the other things I think will come, the other skills are built, but it's so much easier to be a better listener or to be more engaged or to be able to reflect or track those things when you're connected, when you're present. So yeah, I feel like if you can do that, that's the thing. That is the most important thing, I think, to work on or to have in that relationship
Yeah,
with the client.
why would anybody trust to bring up their deep grief, vulnerabilities, and traumas with somebody who isn't clearly there for them, clearly present and listening?
Yeah.
And so I think that's like such an important lesson.
Yeah.
Before we close later, I want to come back full circle to that, which is what would you recommend to change? But before we even go there, what symbols did you bring? If you would hold one up and describe its qualities, and bring it right up to the camera so we can get a sense of the details. And who did you bring today?
Okay, so the first one I brought is a heart, and I'm gonna like lean it in to the camera.
Okay. Oh, yes.
And if you can see, there's like some wear and tear on it. It's not perfectly full all the way through. But I brought this because, like I said, I think the empathy and that connection is like so important, and where a lot of healing starts. And it's also where like our biggest wounds are, like, literally in our heart. And I think so many of, our actions are centered around how someone made us feel, and we may do a lot of, there may be a lot of other like outward things that we show, or we're angry all the time, or we're sad all the time, or, especially with kids, we can't sit still. They don't feel like they can be patient and rest. And I feel like so much of that, if not all of it, is because there's something that has really deeply hurt us, and that's why I love the wear and tear on the back of it, is because, all of us have these experiences. And I think they do heal, but I don't know that, they heal without some type of scar or some type of mark to show that it's been there. So
How
yeah,
does how does the heart feel as you hold it in your hands?
it's like a gem almost. So it's kind of heavy. It's very smooth, but it also has corners and edges. And it has, some places that are, I guess, harder to touch because it's in a corner, like the divots at the top. But yeah, it's very smooth. It's kind of heavy.
Hey,
Yeah.
Taylor, what if we pause and do an exercise? Let's see where this goes. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So if, as you're holding that heart, we can see that it's transparent partly, and note the scars, the wounds, the life experiences, the lines, the edges, as you describe it. I'm wondering about two things, and this is just an exercise, a demonstration. If your heart were to travel anywhere, to connect with you physically, where in your body would your heart want to be?
Um, in my chest, I feel like it would come through on my chest.
Uh-huh. And ask the heart if it would send that image of itself to your chest, to this place where you breathe and where you experience. Ask the heart if it's willing to go there to send an image of itself and how it feels. Now, of course, if we were doing this therapeutically, I would slow everything down. But for demonstration purposes, is the heart willing to go into your chest, to be there, to send its image, its experience?
Yeah.
And how does it checking in silently with it? How does it feel while it's there?
It feels like welcoming, like open.
And how are you with that?
I'm good with that. I like that.
So would the heart like to, that part of the heart that has taken up a space now within you, would it like to stay there for a while we while we continue our conversation?
Yeah.
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 All right. So if the heart were to turn and send a message to all of us,
Mm-hmm.
to share something that it wants us to understand, to just help us, what would the heart say to us? And take a moment to really listen in to the heart that you hold,
Mm-hmm.
a heart that trusts you to rest in your hands, that you hold with your fingers, that you can hear. What is it the heart wants us to know?
I think they would want us to know, or it wants us to know that that gentleness, um, patience, um, and firmness, I think are
Mm.
the things that we always get to bring with us when we, especially, in this field.
Yeah.
Being patient, allowing that time for our hearts to be open.
Mhm.
Um, Being gentle, as we're working with that space and with those things. Um, and I think firmness, because boundaries and
Mhm. Mhm.
um, being able to hold that space,
Mm.
is important and necessary. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Keeping it safe.
yeah.
Mm. Now, let's introduce your second symbol, and then we'll build a relationship between them and with you.
Okay. The
Mhm.
second one is going to be a little bit harder to hold up because it's a tiny little mirror.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
there used to be a sticker on here, I think, that kind of peeled off. So there's a little, it looks like it was like a moon, but yeah.
What are the
Um,
qualities that this mirror has?
well, one, it's round and it's small and kind of, this compact in that way. But also smooth. The edges aren't quite as like smooth and refined.
Mhm.
They're kind
Mm.
of
Edges. Uh-huh.
yeah, there's kind of
Yeah.
raw a little bit, but there's like a design to them.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
and it's, more or less clean, even though it has that sticker on it, it still, I think, reflects pretty well.
So Taylor, on one side is the reflective surface.
Yeah.
Describe the other side, the side you didn't show to us.
Oh no. Wait a minute, could you say it again? It glitched and I
Describe
missed it.
the, oh, um, you showed us the reflective side.
Yes.
Now describe the opposite side, the side you didn't show us.
Oh, yeah. The back or the other side of it, it looks like it has like a kind of paint on it or something. It's still pretty smooth to the touch. It has some markings, some scratches on it, some wear and tear. Um, but it's definitely not as smooth as the reflective side. It's a little kind of texture to it, but yeah.
Yeah. Without the dark, without this paint that um, blocks a
Mhm.
transparency, there would be no reflection. So metaphorically,
Mhm.
all mirrors must have the dark
Mhm.
side. They must have this darkness to even allow
Mhm.
reflection. And I wonder if that metaphor, how that metaphor is relevant to you.
Um, I think it's such a good like part because I didn't even think about the
Mhm.
backside and sharing it, but it is so necessary to have had your own experiences, your own loss, your own
Mm.
your own pain and to have been, you know, I guess through things in some way in order to be able to even a little bit hold up a reflection or something for somebody else. And when I think about a mirror, I think about, you know, the reason the reflective side works is because it's clear. And so there does have to be some type of boundary between this dark side, these things that you have experienced, and a place where I guess light and other stuff can still shine in and still work. So there is a balance that has to be had with both.
Mhm, mhm. There are so many other places, as you know, that we could go with this, but let's join the heart and the mirror and see what their potential relationship may be. So if you just hold them both up so we could see them. Yeah. Now, just bring them a little closer, only because the shadowing of your background, it
Oh,
blocks out. No, you're good right there.
okay.
Yeah, you're good. So turn them in a way where they can see each other from your point of view.
Mhm.
And I'll ask you a series of questions. Do they know each other?
Yes,
Do they like each other?
yes.
Does either one of them have a request from the other? Something they
Well,
need?
I think they like each other most of the time. I think there are times when they don't like each other.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I think, I don't know, the request, um,
Who would make it?
I think it would be the heart. Um, and maybe sometimes it's for a break or for space.
Oh,
Um,
yes, yes. Be a
uh,
break from all this reflection. I love it.
yeah, I think,
Yeah. Mhm.
um,
But how does the mirror respond to that? What does it have to offer? What might it be willing to do?
uh, I don't think the mirror, even though I think it understands that request, I don't think it would go anywhere. I think that's
Okay, okay, yes. Now, what is it that they would like to say to each other, being present to each other? But this is private, so keep
Mhm,
that silence. So just take
mhm,
a few seconds to
mhm,
see if you can be the witness to overhear them in what they may say to each other, which is none of our business. So take
mhm,
a few seconds there.
mhm.
Now, allow them to turn to you. So we always start with the one, and then we connect with the two, the dualities, and then we bring in the third, which is you. Allow them each to say something to you or to make a request from you. But again, Taylor, keep it private. How was that experience for you? Witnessing them, listening to them.
Um, Very uh like open. I feel very like seen. I guess that's
Mhm.
um but also very a little exposed too.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm,
So I think that's so incredibly generous
mhm,
of you to bring up the idea that even in silence, we are exposed, we are vulnerable,
mhm,
and how important safety and protection is. Now, in narrative sound therapy, which is what I teach, silence, symbol engagement, and the privacy are all part of finding the I-thou connection, the presence. And so now, if in agreement,
Mhm.
the three of you would like to offer a wisdom,
Mhm.
what would you tell us here in the world? What would you like to tell therapists or those folks seeking therapy or potential clients? What would you most want? What wisdoms do the three of you have to share?
Um, I think for clients is once you've found someone that you can trust or you feel that aligns with you, um, you have to allow yourself to be seen. You have to, even if it's in a small way, begin that process of like letting your guard down and allowing yourself to be seen. I think for therapists and clinicians just across the board, I think you also have to be vulnerable and allow yourself to be seen some too. Um, I think in my experience with clients, especially kids, I think as adults, we learn a lot more we've taken on the rules of engagement very well. But I think especially with kids, one of the reasons I've had such, I think in my opinion, and I think theirs would be really good relationships with my clients and students and children that I worked with is that I allowed myself to be seen.
Mm,
And I don't know that that means telling all of your story or revealing all of your,
yeah.
my favorite color is this and knowing all of those
Right.
things. But I think being genuine and being authentic,
Mm,
I think they got a sense of that I'm a real person and that I'm, connected to that realness with them too.
mm,
Um,
mhm.
and then I think for clinicians specifically, to be gentle. Um, it can be really easy to work with a client or work with a child and want to fix all the things, want to do all the things and
Mm,
want to change everything and or working with their parents and
mm.
like you got to fix this, it's got to be this. And I think you get to be gentle because we're in this vulnerable space with them. And while we can see all of the things that need to be changed and connected, I think we can't lose sight of, it's their process and it has to be at their pace and at their time. Um, and yeah, I would say that's what we would share.
Such deep respect for the person, no matter their age,
Mhm.
such deep compassion and sensitivity, such patience, that all of these qualities that you are, that you represent, that you bring are not, there's nothing phony or artificial or stiff about
Mhm.
integrating these and be and being present to vulnerability and being open without using openness or sharing as a manipulative
Mhm.
thing, but
Mhm.
rather maintaining the integrity of therapy in that gentle, collaborative, patient way of being authentic,
Yeah.
being real, being truth filled as you
Mhm.
are.
Yeah. And I
Beautiful.
think Yeah, and I think that's the last piece I guess would be like we talked about or I mentioned was that firmness of those boundaries because I do think, like you said, it's not manipulative and it's not messy and it's not, it's
Mm,
safe and it's a space that allows for them to heal and allows for them to have, the space for their process, but it keeps I guess like our shadow and our stuff
yes. Yeah.
where it needs to be, which is not in there with them in that way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Before we move into, I'd like to ask you what you'd like to change in therapeutic training. But before we move there, and to bring a touch of closure to the mirror and the heart, you've taken in the heart and allowed it to have space to be there. And as you said, welcoming. If the mirror were not to be left outside unless it chose to, where would the mirror like to be with you? And that could be internal, it could be external. But just going in to check in and to ask the mirror or invite the mirror, where would you like it?
In my hands.
There you go. The heart and the hands working together.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful because you can have a hands-on approach and being reflective and working. It's a lifetime job to become aware of what we're not aware of.
Yeah.
And to be so openly welcoming with the heart, reflective with your mirror, and at the same time have that awareness of what's in shadow. So incredibly powerful and beautiful and genuine and warm. What supports you? How do you stay creative? What is it that you practice or do to maintain this ability, these skills, especially the sensibility to use your imagination, to be spontaneous, to be creative in the therapeutic process?
I think one is creating a boundary between my work and the rest of my life. I think, going from being a student to a full-time professional, it's very easy to work all the time. We're just used to, you go to your job during the day and then you come home and you have school to do and it just runs over. So one thing is now being very like, I'm at work for this time and I work when I'm at work. I think I try to do a lot of stuff that is fun for me.
Yeah.
Genuinely going roller skating, hanging out with my friends. I really like being outside. So anytime I can go to a park or go to see new places, traveling in that way. I also, excuse me. What else? I have been an athlete, so going to the gym, doing those kind of workout things, trying to find different activities, playing basketball and stuff, swimming, being active in that way. And I think honestly trying to do my best to take these things that I've learned that I feel like are important and impactful as a therapist, and trying to practice them. So in my relationships, trying to be, open, but not too open, and trying to manage that. And I think the last thing would be just being open to learning, really being open to just from other people, not just from my clients, but being open in my life to who I meet, and maybe that there's something for me here, or maybe there's an opportunity for that.
You're open to discovery. You're open to
Yeah.
being spontaneous,
Yeah.
and you have a gift from basketball and from skating, roller skating, and all of that, which is a necessity to be in the moment, immediate, and to make those decisions. And you have, so I think that's a part that you bring that sometimes gets dismissed. And with all the kinds of trainings that are more recipe, more rote, it's very challenging but much more authentic to be right there in the moment, whether you're on the basketball or on the wheels or with a client. And that receptivity really comes through as you and I are talking. What would you change if If you were to find that anything in therapy, training and development could be modified, could be changed, or could be enhanced in some way, what are we missing? What is it that you would suggest?
Um, I think I wish I could have um known that I really wanted to do this sooner. I think, like I said, I played basketball. I did, when I was younger, my mom put me in ballet, and so, or dance in general. And so I think when you're young, it's very easy to fall into athletics, or if you like art, then you know you're going to be an artist, or you want to play music, there are instruments. I wish there was some way for the helpers that exist to have something to go to or to start.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
and so that would be something I would want to add, especially to school or just learning. It's like, you're interested in
Wow,
music, you're interested in people. Well, how can we develop that?
there you go. Integrating the arts
Yeah.
and athletics
Hmm.
into the very ground of a master's or doctoral program that then allows people to connect mind, body, creative soul
Hmm. Hmm.
in their development of just as we learn about theories and problems and family systems and core ideas and interventions and all sorts of things. How do we nourish therapists from the very start and
Hmm.
validate that little girl
Hmm.
or in another case, a little boy that was drawing or that was playing an instrument to carry that through and we integrate it,
Yeah.
it seems to me would help continue that rather than it being a drop off point at some point.
Yeah. And like you said, or just to be able to pick it up earlier. I wish, we have the different ways that we learn. Gardner's, I can't think of the word right now, but the seven intelligences, that's what
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
looking for.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
so I think
emotional intelligence. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one. And I
Yes.
feel like we don't have anything for that. You score high in that as a kid. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Just you keep going to class, I guess, or but for other things, it gets picked up and caught so early. So I wish there was something for that, to help us earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
think, after going through my own internship and just the process
Mm.
of actually working with clients, um, I wish that one, we were able to be paid, because I think it'll make the second part that I'm going to say a lot easier. But I
Mm-hmm.
wish that we were paid, and I wish that we had more time to work with more populations. We have to get 300 hours in essentially 9 months, and then you're off to working in a job. And I think, one of the gifts of my own experience is that I had a lot of opportunities to work with kids, work with families, work with people in a variety of settings. And I don't think it's easy to do that when you're trying to get your degree and work your
Yes.
job and do all of this. That experience, that opportunity to learn and really see where you shine gets lost because it's so much pressure.
Oh, that is so beautifully stated. The lack of money in this field and the time constraints,
Mhm.
the rush to get through a master's, the rush to get through internship, the rush to get licensure, and then still to keeping developing at each level. And as you highlight, a loss of the very sensibilities that
Mhm.
make a good, competent therapist get sort of shaved off on that ladder of progression. What a sadness. What a
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
Lack of support.
Yeah, I think it's something that, now that I've been official now working, I can see that difference now in other interns and other therapists coming up after me. It's just that uncertainty. And oftentimes they do have their own experiences and they do have things to fall back on, we all do. But I think sometimes it can be really hard to find that common thread, you know, that you had that thing that you have been building, or that aspect of you that you have been developing a good therapist, because you don't have enough time to really sit in it and work in it, you know. And it's not until you're, you know, you're hired and you have the paperwork that has to be done and all of these other things that fall on top of it, where it can be very easy for that natural way that you connect to really be nurtured. So
Mm,
that would
mm,
be just more time in that space. I would be something I would really change.
mhm. And not the starving artist
No, not
metaphor,
no.
but time to grow and develop and really build on the skills and sensibilities while receiving an adequate
Yes.
income would certainly go a long way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a strange profession to help at the very core of human suffering and yet not be compensated the way so many other professions are. And it's a real wound in
Yeah.
it's a whole nother conversation, I think.
Yeah.
Taylor, what would you most want to say in bringing closure to our interview? It's such a pleasure to learn from you and to hear from you. And I know so many of the elements that we just touched on that you could go into so much more depth, that I see, you know, the pathways in the woods, as it were,
Yeah.
that we could journey down. But for now, what is it that you most want all of us? What would you like to share or say to us in bringing closure?
Mhm. Um, I think the most important thing that I would really want to just touch on a little bit more.
Yes.
I think you know, as we were talking and kind of just, even as I was kind of preparing myself for this interview and just kind of thinking about it and what I was going to say and, you know, all of that, it had me reflecting on my own journey. And I think I've had some sense of clarity in what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I was going to get there. Um, but I think it's really important for all of us to really be open and really be
Mm,
present in our own lives, because there's so many experiences that I had as a teacher. There's so many experiences that I had as an ABA therapist. There's so many experiences that I had, you know, as a child in my own family, that if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to show up the way that I do as a therapist. And I think if I had been closed off, or I had been so hating teaching that I was just trying to get out of there, I would have missed all of
mm,
this learning that I kind of got.
mhm.
Um, and so I just really want especially the clinicians to really be like connected to like, what is it, where are you trying to go? What is it that you're looking for? And being open to those experiences kind of coming to you in ways you might not expect. You know, if you had told
Yeah.
me years ago that, you know, I would be a teacher and this would be a really core experience that would have helped me, you know, later on, I would have been like, I don't know about that. You know, but it's not until I got into it and I was like, you know, I have to do this, and maybe I'm not working with kids in the way that I want to right now, but what can I do? What can I get while I'm here right now?
Mm,
You know, and so I think if you can have that attitude, if you can be open to just soaking up what you can from even your worst experiences, um, that later you can take from that, you can grow something out of that. Um, but if you're close to them, you can't get what you won't allow yourself to have. So I think openness, you know, being present in your own life, is so important, and to just continue to learn, you know, the same way that I'm talking about my experiences is the same way I like to try and watch different things on YouTube, or different books, you know, not just allowing myself to stick to the things that I know, but
yeah.
just being open to what may come up, even if I don't like it, you know, at least I know I don't like it because I know, not because
Mhm.
I just saw it and didn't give it a chance. So
You
yeah.
know, Taylor, it occurs to me
Mhm.
that we skipped one of the vital questions that I love to ask therapist, and that is, and we may close on this one. What did you learn as you reflect back? What have you learned from clients? And there may be a specific
Oh,
example that occurred to you in
yeah.
preparation that you could give us in this closing way, and just don't feel rushed through this, but what is it you wanted to share with us that it was a learning experience, a lesson from your clients?
Um, hmm. There's so many now that have that have popped up. I don't know where to go. Okay, I think can I share two?
Yeah, but yes, please do. Yeah, because
Okay.
we learn, it doesn't matter where it's placed in this video, we learn from your experience.
Mhm. Okay, I would say one of the a really big opening for me as a therapist was during my internship, and I was working with a client, and he was 9 at the time, and he had lost his mother probably a year and a half prior. And so his father had brought him in for therapy, and he wasn't, again, it was more so the focus was he had lost his mom, but he was also starting to struggle at school. And so I started doing play therapy with him. And in one of our sessions, it was probably let's say maybe the 6th or 7th session. He had asked me to, at some point in the session, he had asked me to hold him like a baby. And I ended up kind of doing, he's 9, so I did my best to kind of, cradle
Sure.
him like a mom would a baby.
Yeah.
And that was the only time in our play that had happened. And I guess to give some context, oftentimes when I go into the play therapy room with boys, there is some nurturing. They might cook things, but a lot of times it's playing with action figures. It's a little bit more, they want to like rough house a little bit more, or, play with swords and things like this. Then, like I said, eventually he kind of opened up to like being a doctor here and there, but it was more the kind of rough play. And so this moment where he asked me to hold him like a baby was very kind of shocking and new. And it led to, I think, 2 or 3 sessions after that where he wanted to like lay next to me, or he just wanted to be, I think, held and embraced more. And so there's obviously a way to negotiate that that's appropriate for the client. But I bring that up because when he asked me to hold him, there was a lot of like anxiety that had come up for me. And I think of anxiety that comes up for clinicians in general, because physical contact and we don't want to, and all of those things. And the reason that I had, navigated it the way that I did and went through it was because I followed my own heart and was really connected with him in that experience. And I think after that moment, it opened up another side of his play and another side of him that had I, closed that off, I think it would have kept him shut down and maybe really drawn out that process. And so I think, again, being connected and being, when you have that relationship with your client, you can really be present and really feel what's in the room with you. And so you have to be open to that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, powerful. The risk, the vulnerability, and the decision to be careful, compassionate, caring, and gentle in that play therapy context.
Yeah. And then the other story that I will share, this was not with when I was doing therapy. This is when I was doing ABA therapy and working with children who had autism. And I will share, I'll explain it after I share, but I had been working with this client. I probably over the course of 3 weeks, and I would go to see this child, let's say from 9 to 12 each day. And I would see him 3 times a week. And in the course of this 3 weeks of going to see him, he cried the entire time. He was resistant and shut down the entire time. And it made my job extremely difficult. You know, as soon as he saw me, he was like, oh no, we're gonna, and just would be resistant the whole time. And I remember probably into the second week, his mom had come to me and was just so distraught and kind of upset, and was just like, you know, I was his third or fourth therapist at the time. And the therapist that had kind of passed me off or passed him off to me because they were transitioning out was kind of like, I don't know what you're going to do with him. He won't, you know, he's resistant. We don't know what to do. They had struggled with him up to this point. And so I had been with him now for these 2 weeks. He's still struggling. And so his mom was kind of just like, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. You know, I just hope that one day he's able to, I don't know, just be able to take care of himself. And I didn't really have any words for her other than, I'm going to do it my best. I'm not going to give up on him. But in that, I remember just from the time that I had met him, and especially in that moment, just kind of really, like kind of promising to myself in the best way, it's the best way to say it, that like, I wasn't going to just give up. I wasn't going to like, everybody had had this experience with him. And I wasn't going to allow that to define what my experiences was going to be with him. And I would say probably a week or so after that, I started to continue to come, and his little heart just opened up, and he went from being he will never do anything. He struggled to dress himself, to feed himself. And he went from not being able to do so many of those basic things I think he was 3 or 4 at the time, to I ended up finishing with him probably a year later. And he was able to dress himself now. He was able to kind of ask for those things that he wanted. And I remember having a conversation with his mom, where she was now going to take him to another school or end our services, because she now felt like, oh, wow, he can actually, I need to send him to this school that's going to support him and help him to grow and do more, because she could see the progress that he made. And I share that story because I think, especially with kids, there's so much baggage that kids get that they don't necessarily ask for, right? Oh, they're a problem child. Oh, they never listen. Oh, they don't care. Oh, they're such a headache. And I think when we allow that stuff to, shape our experience, we're going to get the exact same thing that everybody else had. And so I think, I guess to go back to that, to empathy, to really be connected and really be trusting and really hold that hope, that, there is a possibility, there is room for change, that they can have or be or do whatever they're trying to. And I always think about that client. Honestly, up until that moment, that I showed up for his sessions and he didn't cry and he slowly became more willing. I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of walking on faith here and hoping. But yeah, it just always reminds me that we kind of have to keep that open mind and that clean slate, because if we don't have that little bit of hope for them, if we don't have that little bit of possibility for them, they might not ever, experience it or find it.
What incredible patience and integrity that you brought to that person, but also that you've certainly maintained. That openness of heart, the respect and caring that you bring. But I'm so glad you ended on hope. And a guiding principle for all of us is to remember, no matter what those reports may say, or the demands from institutions and on, but to have some hope in not only the individuals that we're working with, but also in the self, and to keep that. And you certainly reflect that full-heartedly so much. Taylor, like, thank you so much for being with us today. sharing so much. I love your stories. And I look forward to sharing maybe a case consultation in the
Yeah.
future. I think that we could continue right where you left off
Yeah.
and some work with the images and symbols. And for all of you out there, our viewers, thank you for being present and holding a space in your own life to build hope and to build a trust and to keep reflecting, as Taylor brought to us, a whole open-heartedness and a mindfulness of the shadow and the reflection that we bring to ourselves and that we bring to clients and that we bring to the world. So take very good care, and we'll see you next time on The Person of the Therapist.